During the Cold War, the period of tense relations between the USA and the USSR after the Second World War, the possibility of war forced nations to make innovations in the military technologies. Both the United States and the USSR aimed to keep a superior international reputation over the other country. This situation led to some of the most important innovations in the military technologies. These innovations will be investigated in three categories, which are political purposes that forced these countries to make these innovations, how these innovations affect these countries socially, and how these innovations affect these countries' economy.
Now, let's look at the social effects of technological developments in defense industry and space race during Cold War. U-2 crisis. The U-2 Dragon Lady was a spy jet which can exceed 70,000 feet operated by the United States Air Force. United States was very trusted in U-2 against Soviets. However, in 1960, while an U-2 was on Soviet airfield, it was shot down by an unknown air defense system by USSR.
No one wants another Pearl Harbor. This means that we must have knowledge of military forces and preparations around the world, especially those capable of massive surprise attacks.
This situation causes fear all along the USA because this meant USSR had the technology to shut down the most trustworthy plane of USA. Space race. Beginning in the late 50s, space would become another dramatic arena for this competition, as each side wants to prove the superiority of its technology. Whoever wins this race will convince that it has better technology on every field. It would be gain the country the social superiority. The first big step was made by Soviets by sending a person to space, Yuri Gagarin. This made USA feel left behind of this race.
The exploration of space is one of the great adventures of all time, and no nation which expects to be the leader of other nations can expect to stay behind in this race for space.
With the speech of Kennedy, USA forced the pace on this race. When the calendars show 20 July 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first man who walks on the moon. This means the winner of the competition was the USA. This gave social superiority to USA in this field. But this wouldn't be the last move of the USA. Star Wars project. The USA society had a great fear of Soviet missiles. Therefore, the president of USA, Ronald Reagan, announced a project named Star Wars.
What if free people could live secure in the knowledge that their security did not rest upon the threat of instant U.S. retaliation to deter a Soviet attack, that we could intercept and destroy strategic ballistic missiles before they reached our own soil or that of our allies?
USA claimed to fill the space with satellites that consist laser beams that can trace a ballistic missile and destroy it instantly when it exceeds the atmosphere. However, this was a bluff, but Soviet side couldn't see this bluff. This caused a social destruction on Soviet side. After, in a short time, Soviets collapsed. USA came out as winner on this social war.
Let's look at the political effects of the innovations. One of the most important innovation was sonic planes. B-70 Valkyrie. US government started on this project in order to have a bomber jet which can fly as 3 times faster than the speed of voice, fly range above 8,000 kilometers, and able to carry a nuclear bomb. This project's purpose was to be superior in political authority against USSR. However, at the same time, USSR had the intelligence about this project and the aims of this project. Russians started a project as a counter-move to B-70 Valkyrie. This is how MiG-25 Foxbat born. Russians did not make an explanation for this project. USA was wondering the abilities of this fighter jet. They only knew Russians had a very fast fighter jet which can also fly at very high altitudes. Under these circumstances, B-70 Valkyrie project became very meaningless. Also, it was very expensive and USA could not get what they want from this project. Therefore, B-70 Valkyrie cancelled. However, this didn't mean USA gave up. They moved on with a new project, which is SR-71 Blackbird.
The United States has successfully developed an advanced experimental jet aircraft, the A-11, which has been tested in sustained flight at more than 2,000 miles an hour and at altitudes in excess of 70,000 feet.
The aim was simple. If we cannot bomb the USSR, at least we can spy the Russian airfield, and this will give us the political superiority. But this was going to be the last move of the USA in sonic planes. In 1975, while a Blackbird was on the Russian airfield, a MiG-25 started to trace it, and even locked on it. SR-71 escaped by making an extremely dangerous move. After this situation, USA didn't enter the Russian airfield anymore. MiG-25 bring the political victory on airfields to USSR.
Let's continue with the economic aspects of the military technologies during the Cold War. U-2 Dragon Lady. As it is mentioned before, the Lockheed U-2, nicknamed Dragon Lady, is an American single-jet engine, ultra-high-altitude reconnaissance aircraft operated by the United States Air Force and previously flown by the Central Intelligence Agency. Lockheed, the manufacturer company, received a $22.5 million contract, equivalent to $210.4 million today, in March 1955 for the first 20 aircraft, with the first $1.26 million, equivalent to $11.78 million today, mailed to Johnson's home in February 1955 to keep work going during the negotiations. The company agreed to deliver the first aircraft by July of that year and the last by November 1956. It did so, and for $3.5 million under budget. The flight test engineer in charge was Joseph Weir Jr. The U-2 is one of a handful of aircraft types to have served the United States Air Force for over 50 years, like the Boeing B-52. The newest models entered service in the 1980s, with the latest model, the U-2S, received their technical upgrade in 2012. Since 1994, $1.7 billion has been invested to modernize the U-2 airframe and sensors. In 1999, the United States Air Force spent approximately $11.3 million, equivalent to $17 million today, on fuel for the U-2 aircraft and was looking for a lower-cost alternative. Space Race. The space race refers to the 20th century competition between two Cold War rivals, the Soviet Union and the United States, for dominance in spaceflight capability. The US space effort had more funding than the Soviet space program. NASA spent about $23 billion on manned programs from 1961 through the first lunar landing in July 1969. Estimates for the Soviet manned programs range from $4.8 billion to $10.1 billion, or less than 50% of NASA's budget. Sonic planes, B-70 Valkyrie. In 1961, President Kennedy announced that the XB-70 program was to be reduced to research only, citing high cost, over $700 million per prototype, and vulnerability. The Kennedy administration felt intercontinental ballistic missiles were more cost-effective because they were less vulnerable and were cheaper operationally. Although two XB-70 prototypes were built, with the first flight in 1964, the program terminated in 1969. To conclude, there were a lot of developments and innovations in military technologies both in the USA and in the USSR during the Cold War. However, the USA was the winner of the war because of its huge and powerful economy, political and social power.